In the summer of 1852, deep in the cotton fields of Mississippi, an overseer's screams echoed through the night. Bound to the very post where he had broken countless bodies, he felt the sting of the whip, not in his hand, but across his own flesh, and the men delivering the lashes were the very slaves he once commanded. By dawn, his skin was torn, and vengeance had been served. Our story begins in Mississippi, but 1852, a land of sprawling plantations, endless cotton rows, and an economy built on human bondage. Here, enslaved men and women lived under constant terror, their lives dictated by the whims of their masters, and enforced by the overseer. The overseer was the master's instrument of control, paid to keep the enslaved in line, to squeeze every ounce of labor from their bodies, and to punish any sign of defiance. On the Fairchild plantation, that overseer was a man named Josiah Rankin. Rankin was feared. He was known for his cruelty, his whip always at his side, his temper quick to ignite. Among the enslaved was Samuel, 30 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands hardened by years of toil. Samuel had endured beatings, hunger, and separation from kin. Yet he carried within him a quiet strength, a will not entirely broken. Life on the plantation was a relentless cycle of dawn to dusk labor. Cotton had to be picked, hoed, carried, weighed. Overseer Rankin drove the enslaved like beasts, shouting curses, threatening the whip. For Samuel, every day was survival. He learned to keep his head down, to move with steady rhythm, to endure. But Rankin seemed to single him out. When the baskets of cotton fell short, Rankin's whip cracked against Samuel's back. When Samuel slowed to catch his breath in the heat, the lash struck again. And yet, the worst was not the pain of the whip, but the humiliation. Rankin would beat a man in front of his wife. He would strip a woman bare and strike her as the children looked on. He wanted not just obedience, but broken spirits. One evening, after a long day in the fields, Rankin accused a younger slave, Elijah, of hiding cotton. The boy was barely 16. Rankin tied him to the post and lashed him until the boy collapsed unconscious. Samuel stood nearby, his fists clenched, his jaw locked, forced to watch. That night, Elijah died of his wounds. Something changed in Samuel. That boy's screams would not leave his ears, and within him grew a fire he could no longer smother. Whispers began to spread in the quarters. Rankin had gone too far. Some said the devil himself walked in that man's shadow. Others said God would one day deliver justice. But Samuel was not content to wait for heaven. With a small circle of trusted men, Joseph, Isaac, and Caleb, Samuel began to speak of revenge. Quietly, cautiously. They knew the risk. To strike at Rankin was to sign their own death warrants. But after Elijah's death, they felt they were already living ghosts. Night after night, in hushed tones, they made their plan. They would wait until Rankin was isolated, far from the master's house where no one could hear. They would turn his own weapon against him. The night came in late August. The air was thick, the moon a pale slice in the sky. Rankin had stayed late, keeping watch over the cotton barns. He carried a lantern in one hand, his whip in the other. Samuel and the others approached, pretending to be carrying out chores. Rankin barely looked at them, until it was too late. With sudden force, Samuel struck him from behind, knocking the whip from his hand. The others grabbed his arms, wrestling him to the ground. Rankin shouted, cursed, thrashed, but 4 strong men held him firm. They dragged him to the very post where Elijah had died. The irony was deliberate. His wrists were bound, his chest pressed to the rough wood. For the first time, Josiah Rankin was powerless. Samuel picked up the whip. The men exchanged no words. They didn't need to. The first lash tore across Rankin's back. His scream cut through the night. Another lash followed, and another. The overseer begged, pleaded, cursed, threatened, but the men did not stop. Years of pain, humiliation, and rage poured into every stroke. The crack of leather echoed like thunder. Flesh split. Blood soaked his shirt. His cries grew weaker, his body sagging against the ropes. By the time Samuel lowered the whip, Rankin's back was shredded. His breath came in shallow gasps. Moments later, silence. The overseer of the Fairchild plantation was dead. The men stood over him, their chests heaving, their hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of what they had done. They had struck down the man who embodied their torment. They had reclaimed, for one brief moment, their dignity. When Rankin's body was discovered, chaos erupted. The master raged. Patrols were sent out. The slaves were interrogated, threatened, beaten. Some accounts say Samuel and his companions were quickly seized, tried in a sham court, and hanged as an example. Others whisper they escaped into the swamps, vanishing into the night, their fate unknown. What is certain is this: the story spread. On plantations nearby, whispers carried in the dark. The overseer was whipped to death. The slaves took vengeance. For the enslaved, it was a tale of hope, proof that even the most brutal oppressor could be brought low. For the masters, it was a tale of terror, a reminder that beneath the silence of submission lay a storm waiting to break. History rarely records the names of men like Samuel, but their actions linger in memory. Each act of resistance, each spark of defiance, chipped away at the system of slavery, reminding the world that those in bondage were not passive victims, but human beings who fought, when they could, how they could, for their dignity. This was Samuel's story, one among countless others that remain untold, stories of pain, of defiance, of vengeance in the darkest chapters of American history. If you want to uncover more hidden slave stories, watch this playlist here, and don't forget to subscribe, for every week we bring to light the history that others tried to bury. Until next time, remember, silence does not mean submission. Even in the shadows, voices rise.